want to welcome everybody to another edition of Rubbing is Racing. I am your host, Mr. CJ Sports. With me, as always, my co-host, Steve Big Sweat Billmeyer. How are you doing tonight, Steve?
Oh, I'm doing good, doing real good. A lot of excitement this weekend.
That there was. Good God Almighty, there was a lot of excitement. Before we jump into everything, I want to congratulate a couple people. We've had a couple people come on the show as of late from the ARCA series, and of course, Kansas this weekend was their last race of the year, and so I want to congratulate Grant Enfinger for wrapping up the championship over there in the ARCA series. Also, Mason Mitchell, we had him on Wednesday night, and he went on to win at Kansas. Congratulations to him. Also, we've had Sarah Cornett Ching on a couple times, and as a matter of fact, she'll be returning to the 110 Nation Sports Show Wednesday night as well. Congratulate her for her 7th place finish in the points, highest for a female in that series. And everybody else that had Austin Wayne Self we've had on the show as well, 2nd in the points. A lot of people I want to congratulate as their season comes to an end. And I tell you what, the ARCA series gives us, even the K&M Pro series, both of these series give us a lot of hope for future talent coming up in the ranks, if it be in the Camping World Series, the Xfinity Series, or even the Sprint Cup Series. How excited are you to see this season come to an end, but more so for the ARCA series, but more so see the talent that we're getting ready to be blessed with here in the real near future?
Yeah, I'm a giant fan of the ARCA series, mostly because, well, like you said, it's definitely a good proving ground for young racers to move themselves up, and they race stock cars on dirt. That makes me a fan right there.
Oh, goodness. Definitely a lot of talent out there.
Yeah.
I really am glad that NBC really stepped up their game and is bringing us all this coverage that we were missing all these years. And got to be thankful for NBC and their coverage of the K&M Pro and the ARCA series.
Well, they've really shown them a lot this year, more so in the past, I believe. And previous to this year, everybody's opinion about the ARCA series was it was great to watch at Talladega and Daytona because they tore up so much stuff and wrecked so much stuff. But that's not it.
No.
They have a lot of good racing. They've got a lot of strong teams that can run up front and race with each other. And they have a couple of drivers that race Dodges, too, so that's another plus. So they've got a lot going on that you don't get from NASCAR.
Also got to congratulate, we had Natalie Decker on Racing with Big Sweat on Thursday night. And we've had Hannah Newhouse on a few times as well on the 110 Nation Sports Show. They are out there at the Drivers for Diversity. We're going to have Hannah back on this week as well. But congratulations for them for being selected and being out there. That's a great program for NASCAR in helping bring all types of cars or all types of drivers and widening our fan base as well. So congratulations to those drivers being selected, and good luck for those drivers.
Yep. Yeah, definitely so.
We get past the ARCA series race out there, and I got an opportunity to see that firsthand. I watched the Xfinity series race, a great race as well, and then I had to play catch up with the Sprint Cup series races. I didn't get blessed with all 3 opportunities of watching it live, but I did get to catch up on both on the Sprint Cup series race. First, the Xfinity Series race. Great race. Kyle Busch, once again, leading the way. I don't know. I enjoyed the race. I thought it was a great race. Did you get an opportunity to watch the Xfinity Series guys out there?
Oh, yeah. And to back up my opinion about Kyle Busch, if you listen to him on the radio, the way he can break down a corner into a half a dozen different segments, tell his crew chief what his car is doing in each one of those segments, and what he thinks it needs to fix it. I mean, that dude, you say what you want to about his driving style and everything, but there's nobody in Cup racing that's any smarter a driver than he is. I mean, he's just one of the best at analyzing the situation and getting the most out of his car in that situation.
I thought it was interesting watching that race, watching them trying to, I don't know, kind of dictate who basically the first place car, if it be Busch or if it be Kenseth, how they would line up on the front row, trying to get the maximum push from behind. I found that part of the race to be rather interesting every time we had restarts.
Yeah, restarts, all of a sudden people are realizing there's a lot going on a restart. There's, a dozen different things that are happening in that little box that they restart in, and you have to figure out all the scenarios, who's behind you, who's beside you, who's going to be pushing you, and who's going to be racing you, and if the guy behind you is going to push you or he's going to try to leave you out to dry. I mean, it's just all of a sudden, everybody's going, wow, they hadn't paid that much attention to restarts or anything, but it's a giant head game more than anything else. And the ones that play it the best are the ones that jump out a couple of car lengths every restart.
It's the way we're visualizing, or I guess more just because the fact it's been brought up and it's kind of a center point right now to restarts. But back when you was crew chief, was this such a important part of the race as it's kind of brought itself to be in today's NASCAR? Or is this something that wasn't maybe so much a strategy back then that has now become more of a strategy now?
Although it was a strategy back then, it just wasn't as well known as it is now. But, even then on restart, the spotter is just as important as the driver is on a restart, because the spotter's watching everything that's going on too, and he could holler, go, if he sees something happening. It's like if you're lined up on the front row with another car and you've got cars behind you, if you're the lead car, you can drag the brakes and slow your car down a little bit, not noticeably, but a little bit, enough to make the guy beside you lift his foot off the gas to slow down so he's not in front of you when the start comes, and the guy behind you is going to lift his foot off the gas to keep from bumping into the back of you, and the spotter's up there watching, and he's watching the splitter on those cars. Mm-hmm. And if he sees that splitter drop down, that means that car's off the gas and on the brake. And as soon as he sees that, he hollers, go, and your driver jumps out a couple of car lengths because he kind of caught him napping. Same thing if you're in the other car and you see that splitter raise up, that means that car's on the gas and you holler, go. So it's a lot going on, and the spotter's a key part of it. And a good spotter will get you good restarts every time.
Now, back in the day when you was doing this, was there, if you could recall off the top of your head, was there any specific driver that you was hoping would line up behind you guys, knowing that was going to be your best opportunity at a great restart? And likewise, there was anybody that you just really didn't want behind you? Either you didn't trust them, they just didn't get good restarts, or maybe there was friction between you and your team and that team?
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want an enemy behind you, somebody you have friction with. You want somebody that you're cool with and that you deal with that's going to help you. And these are the guys that'll help you that know in a situation that's reversed that you're going to help them. So you're not really teammates, but you're just mates. Mm-hmm. You know who's good, who you can race with, and who doesn't like you, and that's something else that kind of goes into the situation too. They were talking about Kyle on one of the restarts whether he was going to line up on the outside or the inside because of the two different drivers behind him. Who was he going to line up with and hope that they work with him? So, you can't see if Jimmy Johnson's on the front row and Kevin Harvick's lined up in third. Well, Jimmy's going to slide over to the outside line. He's not going to want Harvick behind him because he knows Harvick doesn't like him and isn't going to help him.
In other words, coming next week, we doubt that, Joey Logano will line up in front of Matt Kenseth, if at all possible, huh?
No, not much going to happen there. But then again, being Talladega, the speeds are so high, and nobody gets a payback at Talladega. That's just the unwritten rule. You just don't do it there. So he doesn't have to worry about getting wrecked, but he pretty much knows he's not going to get any help either.
Now, Chase Elliott had him an interesting day on Saturday as he had to go to a backup car, so he had to start from the rear. And if I'm not mistaken, he even caught I believe a pit road speeding violation, if I remember correctly. But I know he at least came from the back. To finish seventh, strong race for Chase Elliott. Obviously, with him being that close in the points, he needed to have a good day. Overcame a lot of odds. This maybe give Hendrick Motorsports, a kind of a shot of a boost of confidence in this driver coming into their car next year. Seeing the adversity he overcame this week, did it with coolness and it turned what could have possibly been a really bad day into a top 7 finish.
From what I saw in the Xfinity race, Chase is driving his butt off, trying to get the lead and try to get that points championship. And it just seems like Chris Buescher is point racing. He's not pushing it as hard. He's just trying to finish the race and get a top 10 finish to kind of help cushion his points lead. So it's two totally different driving styles right now between the two of them, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I like the idea that Chase is aggressive and has that drive in him. I'm just wondering next year in Cup if that's going to help him or hurt him. Is that going to make him drive over his head trying to prove himself in Cup? So it's going to be interesting. That's one of the key things to watch in 2016 is just how good he does.
Now, also before this race, it was kind of put out there, and I have heard multiple reports, so this really wasn't nothing to be surprising nobody. But Regan Smith no longer being a Junior Motor Sports next year. A lot of rumors have tied him to Richard Petty Motorsports. I know they're just rumors, but is Regan Smith, if this ends up being something that comes true, is Regan Smith ready to be back up in the Sprint Cup Series, or is Regan Smith, I don't know, I have a handful of drivers that I feel that they are Xfinity quality drivers. They're not necessarily Sprint Cup quality drivers. For some reason, Elliott Sadler's a name. J.J. Yaley is another name. I could probably throw out another one if I sat there hard enough that are good contending drivers in the Xfinity Series, but once you put them in the Sam Hornish, another one, but once you put them with the Sprint Cup guys, it just seems that things don't work out well with these drivers. If the seat was open to him, would that be a wise move for Regan Smith, or is he wiser just to stay in the Xfinity Series and just live a career in there?
Ego-wise, it would be the way Regan Smith would want to go. He'd want to get back in the Cup, but the reality is, it's like you said, he's like Elliott Sadler. He's more suited and better off staying in the Xfinity Series than he would be moving up to Cup. The best scenario I can see for him that I can think of would be for him just to swap rides with Elliott Sadler. Let Elliott go to Junior Motorsports and Regan go over to Roush Fenway.
Mm-hmm.
run the Xfinity Series there for them. So I think that would be a good fit for him and for Roush, because he's an experienced driver. He's a proven winner, and he could help bring some of the other Xfinity drivers that Roush is bringing up to help them further themselves more and become more of a Cup racer.
Now, what is your take on Chris Buescher? You kind of mentioned the fact that he's points racing at this point. To me, he's never really wowed me, but he's a good, consistent driver. It kind of reminds me almost of what we talked about Ryan Newman over the last 2 years. A driver that is a threat to win races, but we're not going to bet on him winning a race. We're going to bet on he's going to have a good, solid top 10 finish or so. What is he Cup ready as this year wraps up? And we don't know everybody's scenarios and how everybody's playing out and sponsorship, and they're getting bumped up. But I've not heard anything about Chris Buescher moving up at this point. Is he Cup quality ready, or is it best that he stays where he's at if he has an option? As obviously Roush Fenway has to do something in the Sprint Cup Series teams. We don't talk about them. The only thing we talk about is either Stenhouse into the wall or whether or not Greg Biffle is going to retire soon or not. Outside of that, there's not really been much talk out of there. Is Chris Buescher ready to make the step up, or is he still a few steps away from being ready for the Sprint Cup Series?
I think the best thing that would help Chris Buescher would be in the Xfinity Series at least one more year. If he wins the championship, to race next year as the defending champion. And people will race you different if you're the defending champion or if you're the points leader than they will any other time. So that'll expose him to something else that he hadn't really came across before. And that would just help his experience that much more. I'd really be scared if he moved up next year. I think it would be a case of moving him up too soon, and there's no sponsor driving him to move up or anything like that. So to me, the best thing for him to do would go ahead and race again as the defending Xfinity Series champion and get that a little bit more experience and then move up.
And one other driver, we got Ty Dillon, finished fourth this week, in contention to win the points in the Xfinity Series, sitting fourth, only 36 points back. I don't know, he hasn't kind of set the world fire like Austin came through. And I'm not a fan of either driver, but there was, an obvious, Austin is accomplished, got into the Truck Series, won a championship, good to go. Got into the Xfinity Series, won a championship, okay, it's time to go. Yes, he struggled in the Sprint Cup Series, and it seems that the second half of this year, things have really started to click better, and they're qualifying better, and they're being a little more consistent up front. I don't see the same thing out of Ty Dillon. To me, it's kind of spotty. Some weeks, yes, he looks good, has, signs that, he's following in his brother's footsteps, and then there's other weeks you just really wonder where he is at. Obviously, Ryan Newman isn't going anywhere. Well, even more so, we know Paul Bernard with his own sponsorship is not going anywhere. It kind of is helping RCR float right now. And of course, Austin Dillon is not going anywhere. Eventually, it's going to be both the Dillon boys in a car up in the Sprint Cup Series. How far behind is Ty Dillon to what we saw out of Austin Dillon?
Not very far behind, and you'll see even more of it next year. That thing called sibling rivalry will motivate both Austin and Ty. They want to be the number one grandson. They want to be better than the other one. So it's going to make both of them drive harder and try, take more chances, try to win, do anything they can to look good in Pop's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, to make themselves, the better grandson. So it's a real motivating factor, and I think that definitely RCR has the equipment to win races, and I think that that'll drive them, especially Austin, to try to win races. I think it'll help Ty as far as getting acclimated and getting used to running Cup, but Austin's had 2 years now, and I think it's time for him. I'm not really a fan of either one of them either, but you got to recognize that there's talent there, and it's going to take something to bring that talent out. And I think racing against your brother will do it pretty much every time.
Now, I got the opportunity Fridays. As a lot of times I do get to watch the knockout qualifying, and I get to. It's funnier because of my schedule now. I actually get to see more knockout qualifying and practice than I actually get to see live races half the time. Just because my Sunday schedule is what it is, and I'm stuck at work until between 2 and 7, depending on what Sunday it is. But I'm always off. Well, I'm not going to say always, but 99% of the time I'm off on Friday, so I get blessed with the opportunity to see a lot of qualifying and see a lot of practice. And qualifying was fun. I tell you what, I never was a fan of watching qualifying until they started doing this knockout qualifying. And obviously it's not the same as Sunday afternoon, but it does, watching the times and them compare times and strategically try to get on the track, get a clean track, get a qualifying speed in, and then cool your car down enough that if you're not within that 24 or 12 bubble in round 3, the first round and the second round before you get to the final 12, I tell you what, watching the strategy and them cool down the cars and try to possibly get 3 different qualifying laps in the time they're allotted and versus everybody else. I tell you what, I really get sucked into watching some qualifying these days.
Qualifying's gotten a lot better with this new qualifying package that they've got. It used to be there was very little strategy in qualifying. All the strategy was in the garage before you went through inspection to line up to qualify. And then, once you were on the line, that was it. It was all up to the driver then. And now you've got different scenarios that crew chiefs have to look at to get the best run they can and to help them. Chris Buescher is one I can use as an example. The second round, I think it was, for the Xfinity qualifying, teams were all kind of lining up and waiting for the right time and try to get themselves positioned so they could knock off a couple of good laps. And as soon as they said go, Buescher just went out and turned laps by himself, got enough on there to get in the next bracket, shut it off and went and cooled it down. Mm-hmm. And you had other drivers that were waiting toward the end because they didn't want to put any more miles on their tires than they have to. That's one of the big considerations now because you have to start the race on the tires that you qualify on.
Gotcha.
So you don't want to, ideally, you'd like to run only 3 laps, one in each segment, put a time on the board and be done with it. And the less laps that you run, the more tread lights you've got left and the better you're going to run in the first segment of the next day's race. It's really good when they go to the super speedways like Daytona and Talladega, where they're all out on pit road jockeying for position, trying to line up with somebody they can draft with and everything. And it's just a lot more interesting now than it was. Speaking of the super speedway qualifying, back in the old days, where it would take 45 seconds to run a lap, we'd be out there for qualifying, and to keep it from getting real boring, the 3 or 4 of us would get together and we'd all have stopwatches, and we'd time every car as they come by, and whoever's stopwatch time was the closest to the announced time won $1 from everybody else. So you run through that for 43 cars or whatever, and it kept you from falling asleep. Plus, if you were good at it, it put a little money in your pocket, too.
I know it was definitely interesting. Not only, you're trying to strategically go out at the right time, but listen to them shut down the motor as soon as they cross the finish line and their time stops, so it's already starting to cool down. And I don't know, just everything about the whole knockout qualifying is, I don't know, it just gives me something on a Friday afternoon. And I never thought I would get sucked into watching qualifying, but them trying to, especially when you're on that bubble, and it's fun to watch the drivers that are on the bubble, and you're down to the last minute, maybe even less than a minute, and now they've already started to make their way onto the track, so that way, if they get bumped underneath that bubble, all of a sudden they got to kick it into gear and make sure that they get that across that line before it hits zero. So it just, I don't know, it's entertaining to me, and it's been really cool to have that opportunity. As previous years, I never really got to catch the qualifying because I was working on Fridays and had Sundays off. Now with this schedule, it's kind of the opposite. So I guess now I get to appreciate the smaller things leading up to the big things. So I don't know, it was just cool to watch that. And like I said, be able to watch everything I got to watch this weekend. We got to Sunday. We knew that Sunday was going to be interesting because we knew that Talladega's a wild card. You really can't count, no matter how good you are at Talladega, you can't count making it out of the big one. You just don't know when it's going to happen, if there's going to be one big one, two big ones. There's just a lot of X factors when it goes to being at a track such as Talladega. So we knew Kansas was one of those tracks that you really wanted to win. And we had this discussion. If your team, Logano, do you want to do what you got to do to eliminate possibilities of other cars being in the chase, or do you just kind of go in reserve or try different things or help your teammate? And I think we kind of got our answer on which side Team 22 was going with, as he had one hell of a race and decided to make another enemy as we go deeper into this chase. Was you kind of surprised by the strategy that Team 22 went with?
Yeah, I kind of was. Well, Brad didn't run that bad. He finished in the top 10. I don't remember exactly where. But Logano, had the right idea. The more races he wins in that segment, the less chance of other drivers moving up. So it's go time for him. He's not going to slack off just because he's already got a victory and he's assured of moving on to the next round. He's going to want to win as many races as he can in that round to keep one of his competitors and hopefully one of his strongest competitors from moving on. The teamwork thing really showed up when they had a caution flag when Jimmy Johnson was leading, and Johnson didn't pit. He stayed on the track as the leader.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that eliminated anybody getting a wave around. So, that pinned some of the other drivers where they were. The only thing they could do was pit, make their car better, but start farther back. And the reason he did it was, to help his other three teammates. And that was a really smart move. I don't know if he thought of that or if Chad Knaus thought of it, but that was a really sharp move to pull off.
Do you think that was...
He's got nothing to lose because he's already out of the chase, so he's the one that can do a throwaway move like that and it not affect him.
Do you think that was one of them thinking of that move, or was that a possibility of a command coming down from Mr. Hendrick himself to kind of strategically help Gordon and Junior still in the chase?
From what I've always heard, it's nothing like Formula One racing that Rick doesn't get involved at all
Gotcha.
in what's happening between his four cars. You know, he just kind of, if he's got 2 or 3 cars racing for the lead, he just kind of turns his back. He doesn't really want to watch, doesn't pay any attention to it. He has an opinion, but he's not going to voice it. He's not going to do anything that might affect the finishing position of one of his cars. I just think, really and truly, I think Chad Canals probably made that call and figured that out. And Chad's pretty much on the ball. And if you're a crew chief, you're watching what your car's doing, but every lap, you're calculating what you can do to make yourself better. Every time there's a caution, you know, the first thought in the crew chief's head about strategy is, this is the last caution we're going to have. So what do we do? Even if it's 5 laps into the race when the caution comes out, they're going to think there's not going to be another caution. So what am I going to do to get to the end and win? And if there is another caution, you turn around and say, well, this is the last caution. What do I need to do? So you're watching your car to see how your car is handling and what's going on, and listening to the spotter. And at the same time, your mind is going a mile a minute trying to think about what you're going to do to combat any situation that comes up that might hurt you. And I just think, you know, I think Chad made that call, and it was a good call, but he's one of the few that I would know of that could think that way and make that type of call.
Now, Keselowski ended up finishing 9th at the race. You mentioned a top 10 finish. And before I forget, I want to shout out to Ryan Blaney and Brian Scott. Both of these guys had phenomenal days. Ryan Blaney in the 21 Wood Brothers car, and then Brian Scott in the 33 car. Not only do you have the 43, you know, there's 41 other drivers out there that are trying to win a race outside of these two, but you have 16 guys, or 12 guys at this point, specifically trying to do all they can to win a championship. So for it to be this late in the season, these two guys that don't normally run, don't have full-time rides or full-time schedules with the Sprint Cup Series, to go out there and put on the performance they did, knowing what's in stake for a lot of these drivers in this championship and even their rides for next year, I got to say Ryan Blaney and Brian Scott did a very good job. And even Ricky Stenhouse, a 13th place finish, that's good for them. But more specifically, those two that are not full-time drivers to come in and step in and put on the performance they did.
Yeah, Cup Racing's getting ready to go through one of its cycles where you've got people, Gordon, Tony Stewart, Dale Jr. talk about him retiring soon and everything. These dominant, experienced drivers are going to retire, and there's going to be other drivers that are going to step in and take their place. Young drivers like Stenhouse, Blaney, Reed, the two Dillon brothers. These are the next wave of drivers that's going to come in. And this is just part of the natural cycle. Some have got to go and some have got to come in. So it's like a changing of the guard. And it'll be good for NASCAR, and it's good for those guys, too. They might not look like they're so great now, but give them some experience and put them on a level playing field, so to speak, racing other guys that are on their experience level and everything. And, you know, you're going to see something different. You're going to see more out of these drivers because they're not having to race against Earnhardt and Gordon and Stewart and everything. So it's going to be real interesting to me to see who comes out of this cycle as the top driver or one of the top drivers. So it's going to increase interest in what happens, you know, in the next few years. And I think, you know, it's good for the sport any way you look at it. Mm-hmm. It's bad for the sport that somebody like Gordon is retiring, but then again, it's good for the sport that it brings in fresh meat and gets more new faces into the mix and running good.
How many of those fans, those Gordon fans, and then I want to talk about the retirement as well. How many of those Gordon fans do you think will become Chase Elliott fans? How hard? How? I don't know. I don't want to say it's. I don't know. Him being Bill Elliott's son, to me, makes it a little bit easier of a transition if you're a Gordon fan, because, you know, if you're a lot of the Gordon fans, except for the younger generation, but most of the Gordon fans seem to be, you know, later 20s, 30s, more of my generation, more fans of Gordon when he was in his earlier part of the career versus his later part of the career, because you just had so many other drivers come in, and it just seemed that at that point, the fanship just kind of went every which direction. But when Gordon came into NASCAR, there wasn't a lot of drivers you wanted to jump on, and there for a while it was either you was a Gordon fan or you was a Senior fan when they had their rivalry going on. But how hard or how many fans do you think will transition to be Gordon fans, or do you think that they will go elsewhere?
I don't think many of them will fall over to being Chase Elliott fans. If you look at some of these groups that are devoted to Jeff Gordon, and there's, you know, a ton of the group members are saying, well, I'm not going to watch NASCAR anymore after Gordon retires, because it won't be the same with Jeff not being out on the track. You know, it's like they were in an uproar when it was said that Chase was going to drive the number 24. And they were all like, well, no, they shouldn't do that. That's Jeff's number. And it's like Junior Nation. They're so locked in on Jeff. And, you know, it's like they say when he retires, they're just going to quit watching racing, they say. And it makes me realize that these people aren't race fans. No. They're just Jeff Gordon fans. You know, and the same with Junior Nation. You know, the majority of them are not really race fans. They're just Earnhardt fans. And there's two totally different groups of people, and they kind of don't cross into each other. I don't think, from what I've seen, I don't think Chase is going to pick up a substantial number of the Gordon fans now. Some of those sites, they talk about, you know, getting behind Chase Elliott, and at the same time, just as many of them is talking about getting behind somebody else, some other young driver. So, you know, it won't be any kind of pro-Gordon groups next year on Facebook or anything, but I wish there was. I'd just like to hear what they're saying, who they're going to pull for since Jeff's gone.
You know, I was a Gordon fan back in the day. And before I continue with the Gordon thing, there's only two numbers. I know NASCAR don't retire numbers, and they do it for a reason. There's just only so many numbers. This is not, you know, the NFL where you got 100 numbers on every team, and you have that option of retiring numbers. I understand why NASCAR doesn't do it. But I'm a firm believer, if there was ever any numbers to be retired, there should be two numbers, and at this point, there should only be two numbers. And that is 43 for what he did for the sport, and then the number 3 for what, you know, Senior did for the sport, and the untimely death of him. Outside of that, there's no other driver that has, to me, gained that statue in NASCAR history or a NASCAR period that is worthy of having their number retired. That's just my opinion, and I was never a fan of either one of the drivers. I have a lot of respect for both those drivers, but unfortunately, me growing up, Richard Petty was past his prime. It was more of an accomplishment if he finished the race and didn't get into a wreck at my generation time versus when he was in his prime and was winning all the races. So I don't want to take anything away from, Richard Petty, and don't want people to think I just wasn't a fan of him just because I didn't like him. I liked him. I had a lot of respect for him. There was nothing to cheer for once I came into the scene in the sport and really knew about the sport, because he was past that part and he was just kind of running out the rest of his career. But with Gordon, I was a Gordon fan. I grew up being a Gordon fan. I loved him back in the day that back when he was in the Busch Grand Nationals. That tells you how far back. And there's certain sports I just can't watch the same person win all the time. Well, it used to not to be. There's a few drivers now that I get entertained if they win. Like watching Kyle Busch do what he did, I was entertained with that, but I wasn't all the time. When I'm watching Gordon win, 11 races in a season, a third of the season goes to Gordon, it gets old. And I'm sorry, I just don't want to cheer for a driver that everybody is cheering for because all he's doing is winning. I went through the phase where I was a Jimmy Johnson fan, and then as much as I want him still to win 7 and even 8 championships, just because it's not that I don't want to discredit or root against the other 2 drivers. There's only certain things you get to see in your lifetime. Just like the 2007 or 2011, 2007, I think, New England Patriots that went undefeated all the way up to the Super Bowl. I'm not a New England fan, but yes, I would have loved for them to go undefeated because I don't get to see that in my lifetime. Not everybody gets to see an undefeated season. Just like not everybody's going to see a 7-time or an 8-time champion. So, yes, I want to see Jimmy Johnson do it, but I got tired of him winning all the time. That's when I became more of the sentimental favorites before I became a Danica and Kyle Busch fan. With the whole Chase Elliott thing, I couldn't imagine the amount of pressure he has stepping into the 24 car and trying to live up to what we have known since, 92, if I'm not mistaken, when Gordon came into the scene, what the legacy he has built and what that 24 means to so many people out there. And even though his father is legendary, I think this is even bigger than, his father being who his father is. To a lot of race fans, and I was a big Bill Elliott fan. That was who I liked before Gordon, so I'm not trying to discredit Bill Elliott at this point either. All these 3 drivers I've been really big fans of, and I remember going down to, it was a Firecracker 400, I believe, back in the day when we was down at Daytona. I remember having Bill Elliott's shirt with the fastest lap ever. It was, 201 or whatever it was, or 211, I forget what it was at this point now. I remember having the shirt. I just couldn't imagine what shoes Chase Elliott's going to have to feel, and how much pressure it's going to be, and of course the Gordon fans, how much garbage is going to be talked when he doesn't have a successful race or a successful season. But even as successful as Gordon has and how much he's meant to the sport, I don't think that those are still the biggest shoes. If retirement was to be today, and every driver out there, I would rather have to fill Gordon's shoes, in my opinion, and then trying to fill Jimmy Johnson. And I know Jimmy Johnson's not been in the scene as well, but what he has done, the 6 championships, to me, that when you walk into, if you're a young driver and you got to step into that 48 car, now you're expected to be a champion. Now you are expected to matter. And Gordon, as good as he's been, he only won 4 championships, and I say only, but he's only won 4 championships. And honestly, the last 3 or 4 years, he's been there, but he's not really been that much of a threat. And I think the family life has kind of changed him. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's great that he's, family geared and family's important to him at this point. But it seems that once you started seeing the 2 kids and everything else, he's not been the same Gordon as what we were used to. But I don't even think that's still the biggest shoes to fill. I could not imagine if Dale Jr. said tomorrow, I am done, the end of this year, so-and-so is stepping into the car 88. Regardless what Earnhardt has done or not done in this sport, in your opinion, I couldn't imagine stepping into those shoes.
No, that would be a tough deal to try to get out of. And Chase is going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure to produce awful quick. But at the same time, it's kind of a no-win situation for him.
Mm-hmm.
If he comes out good and runs good, everybody will say, well, it's because Jeff got the team started and Jeff made the team what it is, and he's just, picking up what Jeff already developed and using it to further himself. And if he doesn't produce, they're going to be all over him. Jeff could win in those cars. Why can't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yada, yada, yada. Plus the fact he's got to live up to his father's legacy, too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, the way I see it, he's going to go through as much as Danica went through
Yes.
2 years ago when she first came in the Cup. You know, it was just kind of a no-win situation. It doesn't matter what they do. People are not going to accept the fact that they're their own person and that they're capable of winning races just because of the race car drivers they are. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Chase handles that pressure. And so far, it seems like he's handling it with no problem, but he's handling it from the Xfinity Series level and not from the Cup Series level.
Even in his interview, I forget exactly what he said in the interview, and it seemed that whoever was asking the questions was trying to either egg something on or really looking for an answer, and Chase just kind of brushed it off like, you know, you're not getting me to answer the question how you want me to answer, kind of scenario. So I mean, I'm excited about Chase Elliott being in the sport. I definitely like to see if it improves the 2014. Like I said, I used to be a Gordon fan. It just seems that we didn't got the same competitive Jeff Gordon as we once had. And I think that'll be good for the 2014 to have a young driver that is hungry to not only win a championship or win races, but also hungry to make a name for himself and kind of get out of underneath the 24 coattail and his father being Bill Elliott coattail, and kind of proving that I deserve to be here. This was Gordon's car. This is now my car. Yes, Bill Elliott's my father, but I am Chase Elliott, and you know, so looking forward to seeing what he is going to do in that 24 Napa Auto Parts car, which I posted on our fan page, and I think everybody's been sharing it. They've released what it's going to look like, and it's a nice looking car. So definitely excited about that. But we still got a few more races this year, and I've left the last two topics that I know both of us are ready to chomp on. And one is the Chase with Sprint Cup point standings. We'll talk about that last. But the Joey Logano, Matt Kenseth incident. And I tell you what, this really, in this sport, lets you know who pulls for who, where the lines have been divided on fanship. What was your take on the incident, and even more so, what's some of the crazy stuff that you've seen today?
Oh, God, it's been a ton of things that I've seen today. What I saw yesterday was Matt Kenseth tried to block Joey, and he admitted he was trying to block Joey, and it was obvious he was trying to block Joey. And at the same time, it's a chase race. Joey's racing to win. So when Matt comes up in front of him, Joey's not going to lift. He knows, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to hit him in the back and maybe punch my grill out or something. But you usually don't crash when you hit somebody in the back. The guy you hit's the one that's going to crash. So, and to tie the other end, there's posts all over my group, NASCAR and other racing, that that Joey should be suspended or banned and all this from racing because of what he did. And my thought is, well, if you're going to do that, why didn't Brad Keselowski a couple of years ago at Talladega get banned for stuffing Carl Edwards in the fence on the front stretch and almost putting him in the grandstand? Same deal. Carl got in the way. Brad didn't lift. He's going for the win. That's what you do. That's what you're paid to do, is win races. Other people are saying that Joey should have backed off, and since he was already in the next round, and let Matt win. And I'm like, well, yeah, he could have done that, but who is Joey going to drive for next year?
Yeah.
Because if you let somebody win, any car owner in NASCAR is going to fire your butt for letting somebody win. It's just not going to happen. You just don't do that. You're a racer. You're paid to win, and you're one of the most competitive people on earth. And that's just what you do, If you're going to follow that logic, Dale Sr. shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. He should be banned from that because he did the same thing. I mean, that's just racing.
Yeah.
If you're going to ban somebody for racing hard, well, pretty soon you're going to have a small field of cars because everybody's going to get banned.
You know,
it's just I don't understand a lot of people's ways of. I understand they're fans, but I don't understand the way they think and the way they think things should be. So I was thrilled with it. I thought it was a smart move by Logano, not so much a smart move to wreck him, but it was a smart move for Joey to try to win, and did win another race because, like I said before, that knocks out one of the other drivers, and that puts more pressure on the other drivers, to the other 11 drivers rather, to feel like they have to win at Talladega to move up. They can't count on what their points are because, you know, they might be like Johnson. They might fall out early like he did at Dover, and then they're on the sidelines watching the chase. I mean, there's just so much that could have happened that didn't happen. But the best thing about it to me is when it gets down to about 5 laps to go next week in Talladega, it's going to be a hell of a race, those last 5 laps.
Should he have possibly waited with the lap traffic being where it was at, and there still being, it was either lap 3 or lap 5 when that happened, or 3 laps left or 5 laps, I can't remember now, but there still being a few laps left, should have possibly Joey Logano maybe, you know, waited. He was obviously not as strong at one end, but at the other end is where he closed so quick. And knowing that he was going to have that opportunity again, should he have possibly waited for a better time, or was this one of those things that it was kind of now or never in his point of view?
Yeah, there's no chance of waiting. You got to jump on the opportunity when it arises. Yeah, it wasn't but 3 laps left in the race, but if he'd have backed off and waited till later to pass, somebody could have blown a motor and dumped oil on the track, and he could have hit the wall, and he'd have been out. I mean, you just can't wait. You've got to jump on that opportunity when it presents itself instead of saying, well, I know I can pass him, I'll just wait till a better opportunity, because you might not get that opportunity. There's too many things could go wrong. Your motor could blow up. You could have a flat tire. And all of a sudden you're out, you're eliminated from winning. So you just have to jump on that stuff when it's there and not try to wait it out or wait for a better time or anything. And that's the deal between somebody being a winning race car driver and just a race car driver is a winner. If that door opens an inch, if there's the slightest little gap to create a hole that he can jump in, that winner's going to jump right in it and let the chips fall where they may. And a regular driver is, going to think about it. He's going to think, well, do I want to do this, or can I do this? Can I make it through there? And you don't have time to think. You just got to go with your gut and go when you get a chance. And that's it kind of ties into what you were saying about Gordon not racing as hard, not winning as much, and his driving style and racing style has changed here toward the end of his career. And that's a common thing with any driver, really. When you're a young driver like Kyle Busch was last year, you think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. You think nothing's going to happen to you. And the word was in the garage last year was what made Kyle so good was he hadn't crashed hard yet. But that'll change your attitude. And then he crashed at Daytona and hurt himself. And, it's kind of slowed him down, and it's the same way with Jeff. You get older, and you start thinking, I could get hurt. if I wreck? Maybe I shouldn't jump in that hole when it first opens up. Maybe I do need to see what's going to happen. And it's not a put down about Jeff. It's just drivers in general, when they get older and they get toward that retirement stage and everything, they want to be able to retire on their terms, not having to retire because of something that's happened and they don't want to take that chance or anything. And I don't blame them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing, you know, with Tony Stewart. Tony broke his leg, and combined with the Kevin Ward incident, that kind of took the edge off Tony. You know, he's realized, hey, I can get hurt doing this, and I don't want to get hurt before I retire. So, you know, he's backing off a little bit, I think, in my opinion. But, you know, like I said, it's not a put down. It's just kind of a fact. You know, it's an accepted fact.
Now, I don't blame Matt Kenseth for what he did. Obviously, he knew he needed to win, and you kind of got to do what you got to do to try to stay out front. And at the same time, I don't blame Joey Logano for what he did. You had a faster car, you had a run, and you want to help try to eliminate any possibility of your competitor winning a race. I wonder in the back of Joey Logano's mind, because I know he knows everybody's scenario, or at least what they were looking at going into this race point-wise. So I wonder in the back of Joey Logano's mind how much of the factor that he knew that Kenseth had such a horrible race in week one of this round, and another bad week would pretty much put it to a point that either he has to win or he's not going into the next round. I wonder how much that factored into saying, you know what, he blocked, oops.
I think that I don't think either Joey or Matt, either one, really had any forethought into what happened. Matt was doing everything he needed to do to win that race.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say they don't like drivers that block. That's not racing and everything like that, but it's what you have to do sometimes to win, so you do it, whether you agree with it or not. You have to use every tool you have to win. And if blocking's one of them and if people don't like it, well, too bad. It's just the way it is. And at the same time, Joey is thinking, you know, he's blocking me, but if he comes up, I can't lift. I have got to race to win. So he's using all the tools he's got, and it just kind of turned into a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
Between the two of them. They're both doing everything they can to win, and it just happened to turn out in Joey's favor instead of Matt.
Now, Matt Kenseth kind of let us know that this is probably not over with without saying it. Basically coming down to, I think he said something about it not being a very strategic move, or I forget exactly how he worded it, but kind of let us know that this is probably not over with. With that good possibility being true, in your opinion, was it smarter for Logano to worry about winning the race, or would it have been smarter to been more focused on the long term? In other words, not creating one more enemy as you're trying to win a championship?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but if you do win a championship, you're going to create a lot more enemies among the drivers because you won it and they didn't. I mean, it's just you just kind of put blinders on and you just race for the moment. You don't think about what's going on. You don't consider the consequences or anything. You're just so much in the moment that you want to win, and you're going to do whatever it takes to win, and damn the consequences of winning. This is what you got to do, so that's what you're going to do. And I imagine, maybe not this morning, but a couple of days farther in the week, Matt's attitude is going to be totally different than when he was interviewed, you know, after the race yesterday. I mean, yeah, he was hot, and he was saying some stuff and making threats and everything, but, you know, that's natural. You're dealing with a guy that's been under a tremendous amount of pressure, mentally trying to get through a race and trying to think about what he's got to do to hold on to the race and how he's going to win and everything. And people that don't race, that have never been in the cockpit of a car, they don't understand. Yeah, it's grueling physically, but it's just as much grueling, if not more, mentally. Your mind, it's going to be like next week at Talladega. Yeah, it's not hard to drive when you're drafting like that, but you're on your toes so much. You're just so key to any little thing happening because you know that any little thing can turn into the big one in an instant. So you're constantly on alert. The only time you get a chance to relax really is on a pit stop, and you've only got 10 seconds in, and you're still thinking about holding the brake so the tire changer doesn't have to chase the tire around. You're waiting for the signal for the car to drop to tell you to go and everything. There's just really no rest during a race. It's always something going on, and it's always something you've got to consider. So it's going to be real interesting next week, and it's going to be like that through the rest of the chase. The chase format, the way it is now, puts a lot more pressure on drivers than the old way did. The old way they determined points and the points champion and everything. So it's a good deal, and I like seeing it played out every year through this. I think the chase is one of the greatest moves NASCAR has made in the last few years.
We got the standings to get over real quick before we get out of here. We got Joey Logano, 2 wins, obviously, in the next round, sitting on top of the points. Denny Hamlin second, Kurt Busch third, Carl Edward fourth, fifth. Kevin Harvick didn't really have a great day. As a matter of fact, his gear shifter ended up breaking, and I seen that and the fuel can penalty for it leaving the pit stall. Just not a great day for Kevin Harvick. Jeff Gordon 6th, Keselowski 7th, Truex 8th. But more importantly, as we go into Talladega, you got Kyle Busch, Ryan Newman, Dale Jr., and Matt Kenseth all sitting on the outside looking into the next round. Kenseth being 35 points out of that 8th position, pretty much has to win to get in. Kyle Busch and Newman are within striking points, only 6 to 8 points behind. Junior took another hit as well this week, finishing 21st, if I remember correctly, looking about 31 points out of the 8th place spot. So is it fair to say Kyle Busch, Ryan Newman, still a legitimate shot and a very good shot to possibly racing herself in? Dale Jr., Matt Kenseth, you're looking at only one of them to advance, and that is only if they win?
Yeah, Kyle Busch is a threat to win anywhere he goes. So there's no way, you can really count him out. And just like Newman is an engineer. I mean, he's one of the smartest drivers in the garage area. So you can't look past him either. That's what I said earlier about the last 5 laps. These 4 and 5 and 6 drivers that are at the bottom of the totem pole, they're going to be going, well, hey, I've got to make something happen so I can get on to the next round. I've got to win this race. And, it's an old saying in racing, well, if you can't win, at least go out spectacularly. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be, it might not be the 3 chances of the green, white checker restart might not even be enough. It wouldn't surprise me to see him use up all 3 of those at the end of the race. And when you're doing that, you're pushing your gas mileage and you're pushing your tire situation. You can run out of gas running all those green, white checker finishes. Tires aren't that big a deal at Talladega. You can run, even today, you can run the whole race on one set of tires at Talladega. Talladega tires are so hard, they don't wear out. The only thing that hurts them is they lose grip as they go through a heat cycle. If there's a lot of cautions and they heat up, cool down, that kills the grip in the tire.
Gotcha.
But they're not going to wear any tires out there, so it's going to be, like I said, if nothing else, to watch the last 5 laps of that race, because it is going to be spectacular.
We know that both drivers can win at Talladega, Junior and Matt Kenseth. I think if we had a poll, I think more people would feel confident about Junior winning this race. Do you expect either one of them to pull this out and make it to the next round, or are we seeing the final race of Kenseth and Junior in this year's chase?
Well, that's what everybody's saying to downplay Junior's situation. They talk about, well, he's won so many races at Talladega, and he's won at Daytona. He's great on the super speedways, and that's going to carry him in. And, no, it's not. You don't know what's going to happen. They call Talladega a wild card race for one of the reasons is because you just never know what's going to happen. And Kenseth runs good at Talladega. He's won at Talladega. So, his fans are saying, well, he can overcome this, and he can go on and win the race and come back. And it's just, everybody's thinking that their favorite driver who's not in a position to move on is going to make that move anyway because, he's a good driver. But right now, the only one I can think of that could do that would be Brad Keselowski, because last year Brad came into Talladega in the chase, and he had to win to advance, and he did. Mm-hmm. He pulled it off, and he won. And he did that under a tremendous amount of pressure, and I've always liked Bad Brad, and that confirmed to me that, he's a good driver. He's really good. So I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen because it's such a wild card. But you can pretty much guarantee that what does happen is going to set the stage for the next segment.
Gotcha. The
drivers that are out of the chase are going to change their attitude where they can try more things. The crew chief can try different setups, things like that, where they're concentrating more on winning races than they are so much winning a race and keeping themselves in the chase. So, it's a lot of different scenarios there, and it's a lot of things are going to play out in that Talladega race. And when the smoke's cleared, you'll see who's left standing, and they'll be the ones to move on.
One final question when we get out of here. We kind of talked about, we did talk about this topic last week, and so I want your opinion this week. Does Joey Logano put his foot on everybody's throats and try to make it impossible for people to make it into the next round by trying to win this week? Or is he a team player to make sure that Brad Keselowski gets in the next round?
Yeah, I think they'll do, the whole Penske organization will key themselves on the 2-car to try to make that 2-car advance. And I think that was happening during the Kansas race. If I'm not mistaken, Logano and Keselowski were on different pit schedules. Same thing, Logano's pitting and getting 4 tires. Sometimes Brad would pit and get 2 tires, or he would stay out on old tires just to get that information and be able to compare what he's doing to what Logano's doing, seeing which one is faster, which one is working out better, to make a decision late toward the end of the race as to what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. If Brad's been running good on 2 tires, which really wasn't the case yesterday, but if he was running good on 2 tires and keeping up with Logano running on 4 tires, if it comes down to the last 10 laps and there's a caution, well, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to take 2 tires instead of 4 to get that track position and to put yourself in a position to win. You don't have that tire deficiency that like you saw yesterday. I'm just speaking in general terms, but like yesterday where two tires just wasn't working. It was just too much of a fall off and too much time to get all four tires up to operating temperature. You changed two right side tires. You got two cold tires over there. You got two tires that are already built up air pressure and already have some temperature in them. So, I think that's what Penske was doing, and I don't see it happening as much at Talladega because there's not a lot of pit strategy there either. But if Brad makes it through this round into the next round, depending on who wins first, that winner is going to help his teammate win races to move on. So that's the ultimate goal for Penske, is to have both cars at Homestead racing for the championship, as it's the same goal for JGR to have all four of their cars down there racing for the championship. So you got to kind of concentrate your effort on what you're doing, but you want to contribute to what your teammate is doing to try to help him also.
Got you. Definitely be interesting. Like I said, I'm still on that. If I'm Logano, I'm putting my foot on everybody's throats, regardless if it costs my teammate next round or not, because I've seen how those Joe Gibbs Racing guys have been, and especially that 2 or 3 months leading up to the chase, and I don't want a possibility of them getting into the next round if I can at all prevent it. So I know that you want to see your teammate in the next round, but then again, who wants to fight with Brad Keselowski as well? I'm sorry, but team only goes so far in my book. Not only do I want to keep Joe Gibbs Racing out, I don't know if I really want to have to beat Brad Keselowski when it comes down to it. A champion already, and Brad Keselowski, he'll ruffle some feathers himself. So definitely excited about Talladega this weekend. Definitely looking forward to seeing how this round finishes up and what drivers take some of the stuff personal that's happened so far in the chase, such as Matt Kenseth, and if they don't make it into the next round, when they decide to return the favor, such as Joey Logano, because I am sure that this is not over with, especially if Matt Kenseth does not get to the next round. So definitely looking forward to all that. Steve, as always, had a great time tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
We got anything lined up for Thursday night show before we get out of here?
Let me find my notes. I've got 2 out of 3 guests lined up so far. Let's see who I've got. One of them is Galen Hassler, who's a dirt modified driver, and a guy named Todd Hill, who's a dirt late model driver. And he heard our show last week where we talked about getting sponsorship and everything, and he messaged me the other day asking if he could come on. He needs some sponsorship help, so he wants to come on and talk with us and try to get some ideas about, how to get a sponsor, how to make a proposal, how to present yourself, and how to do it and everything. So it's going to be another good show. We're going to have a lot to talk about. And I'm trying to squeeze in a female driver too, because I always like to talk to them because they have a mostly different attitude, different outlook on racing. Just because they're a female in a male-dominated sport, I like to hear how they handle that and how they put that aside to race. So it's shaping up to be another good show. So tune in 9 o'clock Thursday, Racing with Big Sweat, and we'll be talking.
I definitely agree. That's why I'm glad on the 110 Nation Sports Show this week we got Amber Balkin, we got Hannah Newhouse, and we got Sarah Cornett Ching coming on. So definitely excited about having 3 female drivers on as well this week. And speaking of sponsors, let's thank Snafu Seasoning real quick before we get out of here.
Yeah, my buddy Jimmy Haywood that controls Snafu Seasoning, makes it and everything. It's pretty much a one-man band. I give a shout-out to Jimmy. I know he's out deer hunting this week, so I hope he's killed something by now, and I'm sure if he has, he'll cut a roast off and season it with Snafu Seasoning and have him a good dinner. But that's one good thing I noticed about Snafu Seasoning. If I give out what we've got to give out to callers and guests and stuff like that, if we need some more, I just call Jimmy, and he makes it right then. He doesn't have cases and bottles of Snafu Seasoning sitting on the shelf waiting for somebody. He makes it as the need is created, and there's no preservatives or anything like that in it. It's all natural. Only got a half a dozen or 7 or 8 ingredients in it. And I haven't always been health conscious, but I am kind of getting that way in my old age. So that's something I look at now. And if you haven't tried it, try it. You can go on their website, snafuseasoning.com, and order it. Or the cheap and easy way to get it is just call into the show Thursday night. Call into Racing with Big Sweat and talk to one of the drivers, and I'll send you a bottle if you call in. No charge to you or anything, just to get you to try it. So give us a call Thursday night and get you some Snafu Seasoning and find out what's good about it. Amazingly enough, Miss Lee messaged me the other day. I sent her some, and she puts it on popcorn and says it's great. And I'd have never thought about putting it on popcorn. It's multi-purpose.
Good. Make sure we thank Snafu Seasoning and thank all the fans, listeners. Make sure you guys check us out. Check out our company page, the110nation.com. Check out our blog site, www.the110nationsports.com. The last article we got on there is very entertaining. Make sure you guys check that out. We're going to talk about that on the show tonight on the 110 Nation Sports Show. But a local news station reported the wrong team winning a very big, important game in the NCAA college world, and it was very, very entertaining to listen to him for 1 minute and 7 seconds talk about something he had no idea what he was talking about, obviously. So you guys make sure you guys check out the site, check out the shows. You guys have a great night. Thanks again, Steve, and make sure you guys tune in Thursday night for some more racing talk, and be back here next Monday as we wrap up Talladega and another round in the chase.
Good deal.